So DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is the hot topic right now, which I love personally. The reason why I love it and that people are talking about it is because it is what I have dedicated my entire life to. I have been in the DEI field throughout my entire career. And I got into it, I think, because I was always trying to figure out how people got along and worked together that are very different. I went from one environment where I was growing up on Hampton University's campus where most people were black and it was this loving environment to, my parents having the American dream, us moving to a predominantly white neighborhood, me going to a predominantly white school, and just, how people say it's childhood trauma that gets us into the things we do. And so when I went to college, Tuskegee University. I was just an English major. We didn't have the specialized fields that people have now, and DEI wasn't a thing. But then when I went off to graduate school, my graduate degree was in multicultural education because that was as close as we can get. But I was trying to figure out how do we make this world better for everybody, because I was a recipient of a lot of hate and oppression, but I would see the people around me. So that was my focus. My first job when I got out of school, I worked in Arlington Public Schools right outside of DC, trying to ensure that our curriculum was much more diverse. Why did I care about that? Because I was that person who really was built up, really felt that I was magical and capable of great things because I had at Hampton University, I read, Urza Keats, and I was in high school or in college, and I would see, authors that look like me and inventors that look like me and scientists that look like me, and that helped me. Not enough of it, but also I had the opposite experience where the typical child goes to school, like my high school, where you don't learn about us at all. It is as if the only great authors are white. The only great scientists are white. The founders of this country, white. Everybody's white. And so how can someone think that they are designed for greatness if the world is telling you only white males are the ones who succeed? And I knew that was wrong. So I was on a mission to change that. I was specifically at Wakefield High School. At that time, it was one of the most diverse schools in the country. President Barack Obama visited, and I would work during the summers doing transitional English, where I worked with people who had recently immigrated from around the world, and English was a second language. And really focused on how to reach people, how to ensure that this world was not a melting pot, but more like a stew where everybody's individuality mattered. From there, I left to work on my doctorate, and again, looking at the same ideas, the same focus. And we didn't call it DEI. And when I left, essentially dropped out of my PhD program, I was working for a company. We were installing internet access or whatever. But again, my focus was on how do we get people to work together? And although they didn't call it DEI, because I started my own company, Bryant Consulting Group. We didn't call it DEI. I was doing classes at DARPA, TSA, but all the a lot of the agencies, about how do you manage someone who is older than you? Like how do you get older employees and younger employees to work together? Integrating, how to get people who were veterans or who had a military background and people who were civilians to work together, because oftentimes that's different language. So that's DEI. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is really about ensuring that that there's a diverse workforce, and once there is one, how do people engage? How do they get along? Does everyone feel respected and valued and safe? So that before they called it DEI, that's what we called it, right? That's what we were doing. That was the work that I was doing. Then they put a tag on it, DEI. So this is 20 years ago when I was doing this work. I started my change management company, Bryant Consulting Group, 24 years ago. Eventually, I left my own company, believe it or not. I kind of rebranded myself because I was frustrated with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because here you had this tool that was designed to really compensate for, level the ground of white men heterosexual white men running the country, running the organizations, having all the positions of power, and then because of their biases, only hiring each other. They talked about the glass ceiling that women were trying to break. Black people were trying to get jobs. People who, when the LGBTQIA community didn't feel like they could show their full selves. And so there was this very much of an oppression of anybody else that was not straight, white, and male. Affirmative action came up, DEI was coming up, and of course the people who were getting were getting the greatest benefits of DEI and affirmative action were white women. Why? Back to biases. Even when you are in a program of DEI, even when you say that is your commitment, your biases still make you help out the people with whom you are most comfortable. So you have white men who are running the programs. Of course, who are they first going to target? White women. As a matter of fact, when I would go to these meetings, I was always involved in these meetings. They would always say, we're going to set that at least 30% of our managers are women, because they feel comfortable with women. Women are not seen as a threat, particularly white women. So, of course, by far, white women are have taken the biggest advantage and, really excelled when it came to DEI programs. So I was frustrated because, and then even if you look at the DEI field, I think it's 73% of all practitioners, women. Or white people, right? Because we couldn't even get jobs within the field. Right now, if you were to Google search the highest paid DEI speakers and writers of books, white women, okay? And white men. Because if I talk about an issue that's related to DEI, I'm angry. Something's wrong with me. But if a white person does it, it feels safe and people can accept it. But we've never gotten the jobs. And then the programs and DEI started to be a marketing effort. So because I'm working with, government agencies and private sector throughout the country. I've worked with some of the biggest companies and not really small companies. I've worked with major companies. And what I realized as I was working is that DEI became a marketing tool. They literally would have me with the marketing team and agencies because they wanted it to look like they cared, but they weren't trying to make real change. So someone like me, where this is my passion, my purpose, and my career, I became so frustrated. So like I said, I branched off from my company. That's when I came out as Randi B, because I knew my company wouldn't get any jobs because, the people who are running DEI, rich, white males, didn't want people like me who were about the truth to get contracts. So we had the company over there and Randi B went rogue and did my work that way. And so I started really focusing on truthing, people telling their truth, being able to live their truth. And my title was Randi B, the DEI disruptor. Because while I felt that we absolutely needed DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I also wanted to disrupt the industry as it stood then. Because as it stood then, it really was only benefiting, for the most part, white women. And so I really focused on what my original purpose was. And that came with Randi B. And so I have been traveling the world and like I said, focusing on my people, because I honestly felt too that we as a people needed work from the inside out. I wanted us to become unified so we then could honestly insist upon some of these DEI initiatives being focused towards us. But we needed the unity too. So if from 10 years ago, actually, my anniversary just came up. It was January, unfortunately, January 6th. Marked 10 years that I have been doing Randi B, trying to elevate Black people while at the same time really pushing DEI movements. And I've done things like I created these truthing cards because I miss the days where Black people would get together and have conversations. I needed for us to realize that we're not monolithic, but although we disagree, we still can be unified. So each of these cards, 100 cards in each packet, are questions that the Black community cares about and talks about, because I thought we needed to get to talking. The last set of cards came out this year. This is for all people to question their privileges, their biases, their blind spots, to get everyone talking about it. But again, I've dedicated myself to it. And it's interesting, the reason why I first came out with these cards and people kept saying, oh, these are only for Black people? Yeah, because when I wrote my first book came out, about my first DEI book came out, I think this was, gosh, 8 years ago. Never Stays, it's been out for a while. I really still had to make white people in the center of it, because that's what DEI changed into. It wasn't the original purpose. It was like white people were the center, and everything you did you had to ensure that you made white people happy. So I made this book, and if you look through the book, there's cartoons, because I said, who has been able to talk about race issues and white people accept it? And I realized it was our comedians like Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy. They talked about serious issues, but they did it while joking. So I wanted white people to learn, so I hired a cartoonist, a brother, the first black major cartoonist, and he did the cartoons for this book, so white people wouldn't immediately, shut down. Because immediately you talk about issues that make them feel uncomfortable, they shut down. And you have to reach your audience if you're trying to make change. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Randi B. I don't know if I call myself the DEI disruptor anymore, but do know I am trying to disrupt some things. I do want to make change. People, the workforce is going to be diverse regardless of what they try to do, because the world is diverse. That's just the way it is.